Welcome, everyone, to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm your host, Christine Courtney. Our goal here is to give you some actionable takeaways that will help you lead your teams. Thanks for joining us on this leadership journey. Let's get started. Welcome to the Leadership Lounge today. I have a very special guest here. For the first time, Wendell Ramsey. The one and only Wendell Ramsey is here. And Wendell and I, just to give you a quick, brief background, Wendell and I have worked together for over 25 years, which is insane. We worked together before he worked here at Leadership. We worked together at a school. And then I was like, this dude is awesome. We have to bring him onto our side of the equation, and what an impact he's made. So Wendell, just so you guys know, is our Senior Director of School and Community Partnerships. We have a large program in New York City public schools and also other schools around the country, but he really is the foundation, pivotal point of all of the work that happens in so many of our schools here in New York City. And we're going to talk about some of that today and what that means for those of you running businesses out there, because I have so many businesses say, how can we help kids? How can we help New York City public schools? And he's a perfect resource for that. So today we're going to be talking about the topic of corporate social responsibility. And I thought there's nobody better on our team to bring in to talk about this, because he lives this every day of his life. And it's his mission to make a difference. And I'll have him talk to you a little bit about that. But just as a defining of like what corporate social responsibility means, or you might hear it sometimes called CSR or CSR initiatives, that means basically that a company is not just focused on growth of profit, but also taking more of an active role, a positive role in the world around us and in the world in which the company resides and makes its profit from, so that you're somehow giving back, or you're taking responsibility for what you're producing in this world besides just profit for shareholders. And it can be environmental. We hear a lot of, probably most about environmental CSR initiatives. There's also philanthropic, there's also ethical, and there's also economic. So there's lots of ways that companies can participate in CSR initiatives, and most likely do. You may not even know the kinds of things that your company does. And a lot of times they want to know what the employees are interested in also. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. So anyway, Wendell, welcome to the lounge today. He also happens to be one of my favorite people and has taught me a lot in my life too, in my role as leadership. I've learned a lot from him, and some of the which I've talked about on this podcast before. Wendell, when you're not in the room, I do speak highly of you as well. So why don't you start off by telling us about the work that you do in bringing programs to schools and kind of the impact that it has that you see?
Well, thank you, Christine. I am honored to be here on this platform with you this morning. I was trying to conjure up what would I say as an opening and an introduction to this particular platform, but I was lost for words other than thank you, and I appreciate you immensely. The work that I'm doing in the schools is around community development, around community building. And just to go back to how I started with the leadership program, I was working an office job, and I'll say that loosely, office job. I was a social worker with the Administration for Children's Services. And I was working in a building, a converted school building that actually had our offices at one end of the hall and the YWCA at the other end of the hall. And around 3:00 every day, I would hear the pitter-pat of all of these young people coming up the stairs and running down the hall to participate in their after-school activities. And being the curious one that I am, I would actually get up sometimes from my desk and walk down the hall, peek in the room and see what was going on. Well, the energy in the room eventually pulled me into the room. And I found myself spending between 2 and 3 hours each day, maybe 3 times a week, rather, in their space, participating in the activities. Well, my supervisor at that point didn't know where I was at first. And then realized Wendell's down the hall with the kids. Wendell's down the hall with a community program helping them out. So they would send someone down for me if they needed me for a meeting or a phone call or something like that. So from that, I then started to work with school-based organizations. It was the Valley Incorporated, and I was working out of Wadley High School, Wadley Middle High School, 6 to 12 school. And I was recruited there after a friend of mine came and saw me at work at my office job, but found me down the hall with the young people. And he said, well, maybe this is your passion. Maybe this is where you should be. And he was correct. Then came over to the Valley. I was the Beacon director, and that's where I met Christine and the leadership program.
Yeah, that's great. Maybe you can share with our audience, Wendell, some examples of places, experiences that you've had with different companies or communities getting involved in schools and how you've worked with them or how that's helped the students that we work with.
Well, one of the more recent experiences that I've had in working with a school that's working with a particular company is one of our schools in Brooklyn formed a partnership with Gap. And Gap has provided the school with clothing because this particular school is nearest to one of the sites for the asylum seekers here in New York City. And they get the majority of those families, those students who are newly arriving to the country. And they've been working with both the parents as well as the students, providing them with weather appropriate clothing. New York has obviously some frigid temperatures, winds in the highs of 50s and 60s, which brings the wind chill factor down. I'm not a meteorologist, down below the thermometer temperature. But they've been providing clothing for those particular families who are in need. We also have a relationship with Bombas, and Bombas is nationally known for providing socks for communities, the homeless, the under-resourced and underserved. And we've been the recipient of dozens, if not hundreds of dozens of socks that we've been giving out over the past 2 to 3 years to over 30 to 40 schools. And how far out after that? Because the schools then distribute them to their families in the communities. So Bomba Socks has been a partner of ours, directly related to schools. And on another note, I coach high school basketball in the Bronx, Mott Haven Educational Campus, where we had a partnership, still do, with Adidas. Adidas has a national program. It's called the Adidas Legacy Program. They started in New York and California. They've since stretched or reached out to Chicago, Houston, and Atlanta. Each of those cities, underserved communities are receiving sports equipment, sneakers, socks, uniforms, warm-ups, coaching apparel, basketballs, teaching aids, and the like. And Adidas has done a great job over the last 5 years as they continue to support schools that aren't the elite programs. Some of the elite programs, those companies seek them out because then their product is higher profiled at the tournaments and on the national circuit. With Adidas, Adidas went the other way and said, let's work with those young people. Let's work with those programs that aren't on a national stage that still need the support. And Adidas, hats off to you.
Yeah. And that, maybe everyone understands this, but just for clarity's sake, these are not families that are paying for all the amount of, athletic gear and equipment that so many of you out there listening pay for your kids. Like that just isn't happening. And so these companies coming through with this really helps those students in the schools that cannot afford, and therefore it may be a deterrent to them doing any of these extracurricular activities, right? So those things are so appreciated when we get them. And it's so easy for Adidas to do that. I mean, they could have overruns, for goodness sakes. So a lot of the organizations that you work with can figure out a way to give back. I love what you shared about the Gap, because that's something that's affecting their community with the asylum seekers coming in, and they're finding a positive way to turn around and give back and take some corporate social responsibility for what's happening in the world around them. They don't have to, but it's wonderful to do that. And employees today value working for companies that are giving back in some systematic way. And so Wendell and the folks that he works with every day can help with that, like distributing those Bombas socks to the most needy students, the most communities that could use them, right? Which can be really helpful. And actually, Wendell, when you said that, you came up with really clever ways to do it too. It wasn't just handing them out, right? You had like events related to it so that you're also getting more parents and communities into the schools as well.
Thank you for raising that point, Christine. With the Bomba socks, we distributed them through the My Brothers Keepers initiative in District 8 in the Bronx that we were working with. And we coined the initiative Sock the Bronx. SOCKDA Bronx, Sock the Bronx. And in the schools in which we were working with, it was 10 schools total, we had the students do a day of gratitude or days of gratitude. And they gave the socks out to school workers, cafeteria workers, the postman, the mailman that would come into the building. They gave it out to the grocery stores and to the supermarkets. So they went around showing their gratitude by giving out the Bomba socks. And that was a full-on initiative that we created a video from, and it was a great time for all the young people learned a valuable lesson about giving back also.
Yeah, because that idea of how we give it goes for anybody, right? Everybody can get a value or a benefit rather from giving back as well as receiving. You mentioned, Wendell, My Brother's Keeper initiative, which is one of the DOE, the Department of Education initiatives that we partner with. But why don't you share a little bit more about what that is, because those listening might be interested what that means.
My Brother's Keeper's initiative is an initiative I think started in 2014, 2013 by then President Obama. And it was a way of saying that we all must care and look out for one another. I am my brother's keepers. And I don't know the biblical references to that, but I do know it's about watching out for one another. It was something that I certainly learned growing up in New York City. I'm a Harlem resident, born and raised. And one of the things that we all prided ourselves in was taking care of each other, looking out for the block. So if you came on our block and you wasn't from our block, it was us watching out to make sure that you were behaving appropriately with our brothers and sisters when you came into the neighborhood. So I learned at an early age to look out for your brother, as well as myself being the youngest of three brothers. I had two older brothers who were my keepers, who looked out for me even to this day.
Yeah, I love it. And it's true. You do bring that with you everywhere that you go. You know, when I met Wendell, we were working together at Wadley Secondary School, which is a school in the middle of Harlem. That Wendell definitely was, I called him the unofficial mayor, because everywhere you went with Wendell, everybody knew his name, everybody knew him. And really powerful when you're talking about doing a corporate social responsibility model to partner with people who are from the communities, who know the communities, who can help you to know how to get your services or what you want to give to the right people to help make it as powerful and as impactful as it possibly can be, right? So anyway, with that, thanks for sharing that about My Brother's Keeper, because it's something that is still continuing in the work that we're doing with the New York City Department of Education, and lots of other companies as well are working with them. But Wendell's a big part of that program. So when you look at the work that you're doing in schools, some people ask me this all the time at companies. How do you figure out how to measure impact? Like, how, if an organization wants to give, do they say, how can we tell that we're being impactful here? How do we measure this? Because obviously, you know, it's people, and sometimes that's more difficult to quantitate than numbers.
Christine, I'm going to take you back some more years. And we were at a conference, and I sat on the panel in Washington, D.C., around safe streets, 100% safe streets and drug-free communities. And one of the quotes that I used that I attribute to Dr. Lorraine Monroe was something she said in relations to the students in which she was working with at the school that she opened up, Frederick Douglass Academy, the original site in Harlem. And I quoted her as saying is, they don't care what you know until they know that you care. And one of the impacts of corporates participating and supporting schools is that it shows the school that corporations care, but also to students that there are other caring adults who are providing them not just with books and pencils and pens, with some of the necessities that they need in order to be more comfortable in their lives. By the school showing and demonstrating or being the liaison between the companies, the number of incidents go down because there's support in the school that's saying, we care about you. So when they come to school, they treat that school community as their family. Now, in families, we have some disagreements and arguments from time to time, but for the most part, those things are worked out, nonviolent. They come to school, they're cared for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true. When we meet with principals, or in the past when I would work in a lot of our school programs with Wendell, and we'd meet with principals beforehand, deciding if it was the right fit to go in there for both of us. One of the things I always found fascinating was how passionate so many of those principals are about that school being a very safe place for those young people, and how much pride they take around making sure that this may be the only meals or certainly the only hot meals that they're getting in that day, and that they are open for breakfast and they are open for lunch, and they will provide, many cases they'll figure out, those principals will figure out a way to get those kids before they leave some sort of heavy dinner, dinner snack or a late snack or something, because they don't know what happens when they leave those walls, right? But we have them contained here, and we can provide a safe and nutritious place for young people as we possibly can. And I think people who are involved in CSR initiatives in schools are all kind of on that same wavelength of, like, we have the students in the schools. There's a contained audience if we can keep them there and make schools more engaging and fun. And then you have the chance of graduation and of some positive things coming out on the other side, right? Much harder to get people back into the system than to keep them there and keep it a positive, influential place for folks to be.
And also, when you have students waking up in the morning excited about coming to school because it might be Christmas in February or Christmas in October, because something is being distributed that they could use either personally or to take back home to their parents. I've had several students who have collected some of the donations from the schools and said, oh, this would be great for my mom, or this would be great for my grandmother. So it spreads beyond that particular young person in that school building if they feel that they're coming to school and also can serve their parents and family at home.
Yeah. And if you're listening from New York City, a lot of New York City schools have what we also call community school directors. I know both at Leadership Program and at a not-for-profit, Pathways to Leadership, there are community school directors that we hire that go into schools that can help you figure out, what do we do with these? How do we get your corporate donations or your events that you want to help co-host or something? They actually can help do that. Whereas a principal has lots of other things on their plate in terms of mostly, with the focus of educating students, but also, the staff and the teachers and, the budgets and the facilities that the principal has on their plate. Most schools have these community school directors whose job it is to coordinate efforts of people that want to give back to these schools. So if you're looking for them, you can find them. We'll also put in the liner notes of this episode ways that you can reach out either to Wendell directly or to a place where you can get to some of those community school directors in some of the schools or neighborhoods that you might be most interested in giving back to, if you're curious.
Breaking news, Christine. I'm in conversation with someone who is involved in creating websites and links and platforms. And part of our conversation is, how might we be able to create a platform, a link that companies can come to and offer what services or goods that they might be able to offer the school communities, so that it's more of a one-stop shopping. They don't have to look for me, but still look for me, but that they can come to one location, put their information in, put in the goods and services that they can provide, and then we'd be able to match them up with schools that meets those needs.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. And together we'll be happy to put that out to the community at large. Is there any other advice that you can think of that you would give to people who are interested in either beefing up their corporate social responsibility programs or looking at, like, how do you work with schools? Working with schools can be difficult. And is there any advice that you have on other ways that folks can do it?
Yes, reach out to, in some schools, we have family coordinators, parent coordinators. They would be your liaison to the school administration. The principals have a lot on their plates. The APs have other administrative and personnel decisions that they have to respond to. But your family liaison, family coordinator, whatever that person's title might be in the school, would be the best link to initiate the conversation. They would then set up a meeting with the principals or APs to move some of your actions or initiatives forward.
Great. Are there any examples, and I don't know if, I'm putting you on the spot here, but that you've heard from some of the corporations or companies or individuals who have given to specific programs that have said to you what the benefit is that they're getting out of this? Have you heard back like that it's either they appreciate it for their employees or do you hear any of that?
Yes. With Adidas specifically, they ask that you hashtag any photos you take when you are wearing or playing in those particular items that they provide. The corporations want to see that the internet, that the public is seeing where their donations are going and how they're being used. So if you are linking any activities related to the products or services that they provide to their particular platform, that's a win-win for them, because then it shows that they are participating in community development and youth advocacy.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? Because a lot of companies, have CSR initiatives, but also they have to meet real requirements. Like we work with some businesses providing leadership training, and I always ask, do you have a CSR person or component? Because we'd love to show how we can actually have this direct impact for you if you're interested in working with young people. Some people say, no, our focus of our CSR is all environmental. Some people say we already have the way that we give back, but some people are open to it. And I think if you're interested, depending on what you're interested in as an employee, in terms of, you would be surprised how much your company wants to know what its employees care about and how to create corporate social responsibility programs that match up with that, because they want to have similar values to their employees. And it also helps them attract new talent. If you're somebody, a lot of young people coming into the workforce now want to work for companies that are good and just and have fair ethical practices and so forth. And one way to be able to show to them that you are aligned there is with some of these CSR programs. So talk to the folks at your office. Ask, what it is they're doing, how you can help. You don't have to put it all on them. You can also help, or there's plenty of ways to volunteer, but sometimes even giving money to different not-for-profits, people don't necessarily realize that their companies match those. And some big companies, they will match those donations. So if you're giving, $100, your company will match $100 or will match 50% of it or 20, whatever it is. And then your donation doubles and so forth. And so there's lots of ways that you just have to kind of talk to some folks that are around and say, I'd like to be a part of this, or give some suggestions and different ways that you can contribute or make a difference, right?
There's a number of schools who are looking for donations to refurbish their playgrounds. A lot of the playgrounds here in New York City were developed in the 60s and 70s and maybe even the 80s, and they don't have the latest or safest equipment in their schoolyards. And in one particular school, PS 55 in the Bronx, Principal Torres has done a great job of bringing in outside donations to help him refurbish his playground, put down safer mats underneath the exercise equipment. And he is currently undergoing a renovation of his auditorium. The auditorium had to be at least 100 years old. And he was telling me just the other day when I was meeting with him that they uncovered this very famous painting that was on the ceiling. And it was a replica of a Picasso painting of the fingers touching. He was explaining to me. I don't know the name of that particular.
Oh, that's a Da Vinci, yeah.
Okay.
Or Michelangelo, rather. That's Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel.
So it was in the ceiling of this auditorium that sits in the South Bronx that they had to destroy because of the asbestos that had accumulated from the paint. It had been painted over and many, many times, and they had to destroy the paint. But he's getting this auditorium turned into a state-of-art location because he's gotten corporate funding. I don't know the corporation, or I would share and give them their props for that, but I'll certainly find out, and maybe we can post that also.
Yeah, that's great. Is there any other things like that? I love those stories. Any other stories of things where you see either communities coming together or companies coming together or employees from companies coming together to help some of the work that you're doing in schools and the partnerships there?
We do know that every year in the spring there's and I'm thinking it's New York Cares that comes out to paint. And they will paint hallways and staircases and other public areas if you so choose. I'm not certain on how to link with that particular company to have those services at your particular school. But I think if we create this platform that I spoke to earlier in this session, I think that one-stop shopping that'll allow corporations, again, to link the services or goods that they would like to provide, and for us to certainly post some of the needs, and maybe we can match the corporations up with the needs if we create this platform.
Yeah, there is also, some of you might be familiar with Donors Choose, which is a website that helps many times teachers in their classrooms themselves. It was started because, what they realized is that teachers were giving so much of their own money to making their classrooms, have books or have a mat in it, or, to have something that they needed for their students. And so there was a platform created called Donors Choose, where if you're giving money, you can look through just tons of short videos of teachers making a case for how you can impact their classroom. And so that's a really simple way. Even if you just want to give $10, $5, you can choose like, oh, I'm going to help Miss Christina in her classroom in Tribeca or wherever it is that you're interested. It may be a school that's around the corner. It may be a school that you feel like has the most need, but these teachers kind of make their case for it. And then now there's more than teachers on there, but there's lots of options for something like that as well. So those are great ideas. Any other schools that you can see where there kind of would be benefit? Like, are there other ways that companies could benefit some of these schools that you work with that you could imagine?
Other ways for them, I spoke to goods and services. Many of these young people can't see beyond the front doors of their schools. And I think if we could get more corporations who can come in and spend a half a day to talk about careers, to talk about opportunities in their particular fields to these young people, it may inspire some of them to actually go to college, to look more into some of the work that you guys might be doing. You might have future employees sitting in some of these schools right now who are unaware of some of the inner workings of what you do and how you do it, that they might actually be able to make a connection to.
Yeah. And there's a lot of young people out there. Those of you listening may have young people in your lives that want to figure out a way to give back. I know I had done a talk at a school up in Westchester. And afterwards, a student came up to me and he had started his own not-for-profit that because he was going to college tours and realized the privilege that he had to go to all of these college tours and was realizing, wow, there's a lot of kids that may not have the opportunities that I have. And so started a way to get donations from wealthier people in order to provide college tours to young people in schools that maybe were not getting the opportunities. And so a lot of times school counselors want to provide students with the opportunity to go on some college campus tours, but really the amount of money and coordination for buses and hotels and teacher procession for chaperones, really adds up fast. And when you're talking about a tight budget, that can be difficult. And so he saw that need and was trying to address that. And so you might have young people, even within your own homes, that have ideas of ways that they want to give back, and provides a great opportunity for them to practice some workforce development skills of their own and figure out like what it takes to do this and how they can really help and learn some business skills right off the bat while also giving back. Because what I'm noticing is the generations coming up are very focused on how do we give back? How do we involve ourselves with companies that care about this stuff as much as we do? And that we're going to see more and more of this in the future. More companies required to do more of this, and also individuals looking at how do I give back in a way that's sustainable. And people like Wendell, to be honest, know the communities, are out doing this work every day, are great resources for it.
I'm sorry, another way, when you were talking and you was talking about the young person who, with the college tours and college trips, it just reminded me of the need for internships. Corporations could provide 1 or 2 placements of internships so that a young person can become embedded in your corporation and learn not just what you do or how you do it, but the relationships building that's needed to be successful. Everyone always talks about in those interviews, I'm a team player, or I prosper well in working as a member of a team. But to give a young person an opportunity to actually be a part of that team would be invaluable. Well, one of the schools that I'm working with, Bronx Collegiate Academy, is a part of a New York City program, Future Ready NYC, and they chose the area of medical professions. There's 3 core areas. It's business and technology, education, and it's medical. In this particular medical profession piece or area in which they're working with, there are a group of students who are attending EMT training, emergency medical technician training, online, virtually after school, 2:30 to 5:30. And then once or twice a month, they're actually at the training center in Brooklyn where they get the practicals, the hands-on. They've done CPR already. They were doing patient assessment the other day. So it's learning how to respond to emergencies, assess situations, and to apply the appropriate medical support that is needed en route to the emergency room if that particular person requires emergency medical treatment. This particular course started in October and it'll run until about May, at which point they'll then be eligible upon successfully passing the certification exam. They will be eligible upon graduation to apply for EMT positions either in New York City or any other private ambulance company.
Great. Yeah. Life-changing, right? I mean, simple ideas that can turn into really life-changing work if you get the right people in there to help you make it happen. And we even find, I love the idea of internships. We have so many people say, yes, we can do it. And then there are some steps that we know of that will make those internships more successful on both sides. You know, we have done training for both the interns going in, because that is a big shocker to go into corporate America. As any kid, you can imagine listening, you know, for your own kids, but especially kids that have had very little interaction with that or may not have their parents even in jobs like you're in at your companies, that we provide some training for them. Also, some training for the people that are going to be working with the kids so that we can say, okay, this is what you can expect. This is how you can be a good mentor. This is how you can help them. This is how it's different than maybe working with college interns that a lot of the companies we work with, you know, hire these college internships are very competitive to get into these companies, but it would be nice to do some that are also for some of the high school students that can really change the course of a life for many lives. Wendell, thank you so much for joining us today and just getting us started on this conversation. We'll put a lot of this information that Wendell's mentioned in the liner notes in case you want to follow up and reach out to us if you have some ideas. Wendell's a great person to bounce ideas off of. He knows a lot of people in many different communities and companies that can help you also just brainstorm ideas, and his information will be there. And Wendell, thanks so much for the work that you do, and also for bringing some of that knowledge here to our wider audience today.
Thank you, Christine, for the opportunity to share my information and experiences. I had a great time.
All right. Take care. I know you got lots going on that you got to get out to today already. I know that. Always. Thank you, Wendell Ramsey. Thank you guys for listening. And thanks for hopefully figuring out how you can support some of the communities that you're living in or living next to. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'd like to give a special shout out to our podcast producer, Richard Francisco. Check out our notes for any details. And if you get anything out of this, please follow us. And if you enjoy it, please take a moment to rate us or write a comment. It will mean the world to us. We'd love to hear from you. And if you just can't get enough, follow me on TikTok and check out tlpnyc.com/podcast for more information.